The Galactic Academy floated in the endless dark of space like a jewel made of glass and light. It was the most famous school in all the known galaxy, and students came from over 100 different worlds to study there. The station called Velar 7 was home to this great academy, and its halls were filled with strange and wonderful beings every single day. There were the Vethkai, whose bodies looked like they were made of beautiful colored glass. They moved carefully and spoke in soft voices, always afraid that something might crack their delicate forms. There were the Morashi, giant bird-like creatures covered in soft feathers of blue and gold. They stood 3 meters tall and had to duck through most doorways. And then there were the Kethvolium, the proud four-armed species whose skin glowed with soft light when they felt strong emotions. The Kethvolium were one of the oldest species in the galaxy, and they never let anyone forget it. The Academy had existed for over 2,000 years, and in all that time, it had never accepted a student from Earth. Earth was a new world to the galactic community. The humans had only made first contact 3 years ago, and most species still did not know what to think of them. The reports about their home planet were terrifying to read. Earth was classified as a Class 12 Deathworld. This was almost the highest danger rating a planet could receive. The gravity there was crushing compared to most civilized worlds. The atmosphere contained oxygen, a gas so reactive that it could cause fires and eat through metal over time. The temperature swings were extreme, going from burning hot to freezing cold. And the life forms that evolved, there were nightmares made real. Giant reptiles had once ruled Earth. Massive predators with teeth the size of daggers had hunted across its surface. The oceans contained monsters with tentacles and sharp beaks. Even the small creatures were dangerous, with venoms and poisons and diseases. How could anything intelligent come from such a hellish place? But somehow, humans had not only survived on this death world. They had thrived. They had become the dominant species. They had built cities and created technology, and finally reached out to the stars. And now, one of them had come to the Galactic Academy. Her name was Kira Vasquez, and she was 17 years old. She had brown skin, dark curly hair, and eyes that seemed to notice everything around her. She came from a place called São Paulo, in a country called Brazil, which was apparently one of the more dangerous regions of an already dangerous planet. When Kira first walked through the Academy's main entrance, every student nearby stopped and stared. She was shorter than most of them, but there was something unsettling about the way she moved. Her steps were smooth and quiet, like a predator stalking through tall grass. The Academy's security immediately flagged her movement pattern as concerning. The AI sent a report to the administration that read, "Warning, new student displays persistent predator locomotion patterns. Recommend monitoring." But what scared the other students most was her smile. When Kira smiled, she showed her teeth. To humans, this was a friendly gesture. To most other species in the galaxy, showing teeth was a threat display. And Kira's teeth were not the flat, grinding teeth of a peaceful herbivore. She had sharp canines and strong molars, the teeth of an omnivore, a creature that could eat both plants and meat. Most students decided to keep their distance from the strange human. They were not cruel about it. They simply felt an instinctive unease whenever she was near, like their ancient ancestors were whispering warnings in their blood. Even the big Morashi felt nervous around her, despite being twice her size. But one student felt no such fear. His name was Tyrek Verthon, and he was a young Kethvolium noble from one of the wealthiest families in the galaxy. His skin glowed a proud gold color, and his forearms were adorned with expensive rings and bracelets. His family owned 3 entire star systems and the mining operations within them. Tyrek had grown up believing that the universe existed to serve him. At the academy, Tyrek was the king of the social order. Other students followed him and laughed at his jokes and did whatever he asked. He had never met a species he could not intimidate. He had never encountered a being who did not eventually bow to his superior status. When Tyrek first saw the human girl, he felt annoyed. Who was this primitive creature from a backwater Deathworld? Why was she allowed to walk these prestigious halls? She did not belong here among civilized beings. Tyrek decided that he would show this human her proper place. On Kira's third day at the academy, Tyrek walked past her in the corridor and deliberately knocked the datapad from her hands. It clattered to the floor, and Kira had to kneel down to pick it up. She looked up at Tyrek with those dark eyes, and for just a moment, something flickered in her expression. But then she simply smiled and said, "Accidents happen. No worries." Tyrek's crest glowed brighter with irritation. She was supposed to be upset. She was supposed to show fear or anger. Instead, she had just accepted his rudeness as if it meant nothing. He walked away, already planning his next move. What Tyrek did not understand was that Kira had been raised on a world where real predators existed. She had learned from childhood that you never showed weakness to a threat. You stayed calm. You watched. You waited. And most importantly, you never started a fight unless you were absolutely ready to finish it. Humans were patient hunters. Their ancestors had chased prey across endless savannas, following wounded animals for days until exhaustion brought them down. This was called persistence hunting, and it had shaped the human mind in ways other species could not imagine. Kira saw Tyrek for exactly what he was, a bully looking for a reaction. And she had dealt with bullies before. The ones on Earth had been much scarier than this glowing alien boy with his fancy jewelry. So she waited. She watched. And she began to learn everything she could about Keth volume biology, just in case she ever needed that information. Meanwhile, a gentle Vethkai teacher named Lecturer Solus noticed what was happening. She had seen Tyrek bully other students before, but something about this situation worried her deeply. She pulled up the official file on humans and began to read. With each paragraph, her glass-like body grew colder with dread. These humans were not helpless prey. They were something far more dangerous. They were apex predators who had learned to wear friendly masks. Lecturer Solus immediately filed an urgent request for intervention. She begged the administration to separate Tyrek from the human before something terrible happened. Her request was marked as pending and placed in a queue with hundreds of other low-priority items. Nobody in the administration thought a Keth volume noble could be in any real danger from a small human girl. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The weeks that followed were difficult for Kira Vasquez. Tyrek Verthan had decided to make her life at the academy as miserable as possible, and he had many ways to do this. It started with small things. Tyrek would accidentally bump into her in the hallways, sending her stumbling. He would make loud comments about primitive species whenever she walked past. He would laugh with his friends and point at her, making sure she knew she was being mocked. But Tyrek was clever. He never did anything too obvious when teachers were watching. He kept his cruelty just subtle enough to avoid official punishment. Then he began to spread rumors. Did you know that humans carry parasites? Tyrek told a group of first-year students one morning. Tiny creatures that live inside their bodies and can spread to other species. You should stay away from that Earth girl unless you want to get infected. This was completely untrue, but the young students did not know that. They began to avoid Kira even more than before. Soon, the rumor had spread across the entire academy. Students would change direction when they saw her coming. They refused to sit near her in classes. They whispered behind her back. Kira noticed all of this, but she said nothing. She just kept attending her classes and studying hard. Her grades were excellent, especially in physics and engineering. The teachers were impressed by how quickly she learned. But Tyrek was not finished. One day, Kira went to the cafeteria to get her meal. The academy provided food for students from many different worlds, and there was supposed to be a special section for human dietary needs. But when Kira reached the counter, the server shook her head. "I am sorry," the server said, "but we cannot provide human food anymore. We have received reports that human cuisine requires dangerous materials. Fire, extreme heat, chemical reactions. The safety board has decided it is too risky." Kira stared at the server in disbelief. "What am I supposed to eat then?" The server pushed forward a bowl of gray paste. "This is universal nutrient compound. It meets all basic biological requirements. It should be adequate for your needs." Kira picked up the bowl and looked at the bland, tasteless goop. She knew exactly who had convinced the cafeteria staff to do this. She could see Tyrek across the room, watching her with a satisfied glow in his crest. She took a deep breath, picked up her spoon, and ate the paste without complaint. Tyrek's crest flickered with confusion. Why was this human not reacting? Any other student would have complained or cried or begged for help. But this Deathworlder just accepted her punishment in silence. To the Keth volume, this looked like weakness. It looked like submission. Tyrek decided that the human was simply too primitive and stupid to fight back. This made him bolder. But Tyrek did not understand humans at all. On Earth, Kira had learned that patience was power. Her grandmother had taught her this lesson when she was just a little girl. "Mena corrida," her grandmother had said, "a river does not fight the rock. It flows around it, and over time, it wears the rock down to nothing. Be like the river." Kira was being like the river. She was not submitting. She was gathering information. Every day, she watched Tyrek and learned his patterns. She learned when he was most aggressive and when he was calm. She learned which friends he trusted and which ones only followed him out of fear. She learned everything about Keth volume biology from the Academy's database. And what she learned was very interesting. The Keth volume had evolved on a low-gravity world with gentle weather and few predators. Their bones were hollow and light, perfect for their planet but fragile compared to Earth species. Their muscles were designed for precise movements, not for strength. A human child could probably overpower a full-grown Keth volume in a physical contest. Kira stored this information in her mind and continued to wait. Meanwhile, Lecturer Solus was growing more worried every day. She had submitted 3 more urgent requests to the administration, but all of them had been ignored. The administrators were too busy with budget meetings and graduation ceremonies to worry about a minor student conflict. "You do not understand," Solus tried to explain to the vice principal, her glass-like body trembling with stress. "The human is not being passive because she is weak. She is being passive because she is dangerous. Humans are pursuit predators. They wait for the perfect moment to strike." The vice principal, a large Morashi with golden feathers, shook his massive head. "Lecturer Solus, I think you are overreacting. The Varthan family is very influential. We cannot accuse their son of bullying without solid proof. And the human seems fine. She has not filed a single complaint." "That is exactly what worries me," Solus replied. A cornered prey animal screams and panics. A cornered predator goes silent. But the vice principal would not listen. He dismissed her concerns and returned to his paperwork. Solus left his office feeling sick with dread. She had read the human history files. She knew what this species was capable of when pushed too far. Humans had fought wars that killed millions of their own kind. They had driven countless species to extinction. They had tamed fire and split atoms and walked on their own moon. And Tyrek was treating one of them like a helpless victim. The tension at the academy grew thicker every day. Other students could feel that something was wrong. The air itself seemed heavy with anticipation. Even the usually cheerful Morashi spoke in quiet voices and glanced nervously at the human girl, who sat alone in the cafeteria, eating her gray paste and reading engineering manuals. Tyrek noticed none of this. His arrogance blinded him to the warning signs. He saw only a small, quiet creature who refused to fight back. He saw an easy target that made him feel powerful. He decided it was time for a grand gesture. He would humiliate the human in front of everyone. He would prove once and for all that Deathworlders were primitive beings who did not deserve to share space with civilized species. He began planning his next move. Kira continued to eat her paste and study her books. She had noticed that Tyrek was becoming bolder. She could read the signs of an approaching confrontation. Her instincts, honed by millions of years of evolution on a deadly world, were whispering to her. Soon, she thought, very soon. And when the moment came, she would be ready. Not to run, not to hide, not to submit, but to teach this alien bully a lesson that the entire galaxy would remember. The river had been patient long enough. The rock was about to learn what happened when it finally blocked the water's path. It happened on a bright day during the lunch cycle in the main atrium of the Galactic Academy. The atrium was a massive open space with walls made of transparent crystal. Through these walls, students could see the endless stars of space stretching out forever. It was the heart of the academy, where students from all species gathered to eat and talk and form friendships that would last their entire lives. On this particular day, the atrium was crowded. Nearly 200 students sat at floating tables, enjoying their meals and chatting with friends. The air was filled with the sounds of a dozen different languages and the soft hum of translation devices working to help everyone understand each other. Kira sat alone at a small table near the observation window. She had her bowl of gray nutrient paste in front of her, and she was reading a technical manual about the station's engineering systems. She found the station fascinating. The technology that kept it running was incredibly advanced, and she wanted to understand every part of it. She was so focused on her reading that she almost did not notice Tyrek approaching. Almost. But Kira was a human, and humans had evolved to notice threats. Even when her eyes were on her book, her other senses were scanning the environment. She heard the changing conversation as students went quiet. She felt the subtle vibrations in the floor as heavy footsteps approached. She smelled the faint chemical scent of Keth-volume bioluminescent hormones. She knew Tyrek was coming before she even looked up. Tyrek walked toward her table with all four of his arms spread wide. His crest was glowing bright gold, the color of pride and aggression. Behind him followed a small group of his friends and admirers, all of them eager to see what their leader would do. The entire atrium was watching now. Students stopped eating mid-bite. Conversations died away. Even the automated serving robots seemed to pause, their sensors detecting the sudden tension in the room. Tyrek stopped right next to Kira's table and spoke in a loud voice that carried across the entire atrium. The Academy has truly lowered its standards, he announced. Look at this. They are now allowing animals to sit where civilized beings eat. Perhaps next they will invite wild beasts from the hunting preserves to join our classes. A few of his followers laughed nervously. Most of the other students remained silent. They could feel that something was different about today. The air itself seemed charged with electricity. Kira slowly looked up from her book. Her face was calm, her dark eyes steady. She did not show anger or fear or sadness. She simply looked at Tyrek the way one might look at an insect that had landed on one's arm. I am not looking for trouble, she said in a quiet, even voice. Please leave me alone. This response made Tyrek's crest burn even brighter. The Keth-volume people were very proud. To be dismissed so casually by a being he considered inferior was the greatest possible insult. Did you hear that? Tyrek shouted to the watching crowd. The Deathworlder thinks she can tell me what to do. A primitive from a poison world dares to speak to a Vothon as if we are equals. He turned back to Kira, all four of his hands clenching into fists. His friends backed away slightly. They had never seen Tyrek this angry before. You do not belong here, Tyrek hissed. You never belonged here. And it is time someone taught you your proper place. And then he did something that would change everything. He pulled back one of his primary arms and struck Kira across the face. By Keth volume standards, it was a moderate blow. The Keth volume did not have the physical strength that other species possessed. Their hollow bones and light muscles were designed for gentle movements, not for violence. When Tyrek hit Kira, he expected her head to snap to the side. He expected her to cry out in pain. He expected her to finally show the fear and submission he had been waiting for. None of those things happened. His hand connected with Kira's cheek with a soft smacking sound. And then nothing. Kira's head did not move. Her body did not flinch. She sat there as still as stone, as if the blow had meant nothing at all. For a long, horrible moment, the atrium was completely silent. Tyrek stared at his own hand in confusion. Had he missed? No, he had definitely made contact. He had felt her skin against his palm. But she had not reacted at all. Then, slowly, understanding began to dawn on him. Humans came from a high-gravity world. Their bones were solid and dense. Their muscles were built to fight against a planet that constantly pulled at them with crushing force. Their skin was thick and tough, evolved to handle temperature extremes and physical damage. A blow that would have sent a Keth volume sprawling had been nothing more than a gentle tap to a human. Kira set down her reading device. The movement was slow and deliberate. She pushed her bowl of paste to the side. She placed both of her hands flat on the table. And then she looked up at Tyrek, and he finally saw what had been hiding behind those dark human eyes. There was no fear. There was no submission. There was no civilized restraint. What looked back at him was old and cold and patient. It was the gaze of an apex predator that had been waiting for exactly this moment. It was the look of a species that had clawed its way to the top of the most dangerous planet in the known galaxy. Somewhere in the watching crowd, a young Vethkai student began to tremble. Her glass-like body resonated with a high-pitched sound of pure terror. She did not know why she was so afraid. She only knew that every instinct in her being was screaming at her to run. She was not the only one. All across the atrium, students of every species felt the same primal fear. It was as if the temperature had suddenly dropped. As if the shadows had grown darker, as if something ancient and terrible had woken up. Tyrek tried to step backward, but his legs would not obey. His body had frozen. His crest had gone completely dark, all light extinguished by overwhelming fear. And then Kira spoke, and her voice was soft and calm and absolutely terrifying. "You get one warning," she said. "Walk away." But Tyrek was a Keth volume noble. His pride was stronger than his fear. He could not back down in front of everyone. He could not let a Deathworlder defeat him with just a look. So he made the worst decision of his entire life. He raised all four of his arms and attacked again. What happened next took only 10 seconds, but to everyone watching, it felt like an eternity. In the first second, Kira rose from her seat. The motion was smooth and fluid, without any wasted movement. She did not jump up in surprise or scramble backward in fear. She simply stood, like a coiled spring releasing its tension. Her muscles moved with the efficiency of a species that had spent millions of years hunting and being hunted. The chair she had been sitting in scraped against the floor, and the sound echoed through the silent atrium like a thunderclap. In the second, Tyrek completed his attack. He swung all four of his arms at once, a coordinated strike that was considered devastating among the Kethvol. His bioluminescent crest flared with aggressive gold light. He put all of his strength into this blow, determined to knock the human down once and for all. His fist flew toward her face and body with what he believed was impressive speed. In the third second, Kira moved. To the watching students, she seemed to blur. One moment she was standing still, and the next moment she was somewhere else. Her body twisted and flowed like water, like smoke, like nothing they had ever seen before. The Academy's sensors detected a massive spike in her biological readings. Her heart rate had increased. Adrenaline was flooding her bloodstream. Her pupils had dilated, taking in more light. Her reaction time had dropped to levels that the computer classified as impossible for most carbon-based life forms. This was the human fight-or-flight response at full power. This was what evolution had created on a world where hesitation meant death. In the fourth second, Tyrek realized his attacks had hit nothing but empty air. All four of his fists had passed through the space where Kira had been standing, but she was no longer there. He stumbled forward, off balance, confused. Where had she gone? In the fifth second, he found out. Kira was beside him. She had moved to his right side in a fraction of a heartbeat. Her hand shot out and grabbed his primary arm, the one that had struck her face just moments ago. Her grip was like iron. No, it was stronger than iron. The bones in Tyrek's arm creaked under the pressure. A shooting pain traveled up his limb and exploded in his brain. He tried to pull away, but he could not move even a millimeter. This small human girl, this creature half his size, was holding him in place with one hand as easily as if he were a child. In the sixth second, the atrium's environmental systems detected something strange. Pheromone sensors throughout the room registered a massive spike in fear chemicals. Every non-human student in the atrium was releasing terror signals. Their bodies were reacting to something their conscious minds could not understand. 200 students sat frozen in their seats, hearts pounding, unable to look away from the scene before them. Some of them whimpered. Some of them trembled. A few of the more delicate Vethkai actually cracked slightly from the stress. In the seventh second, Kira spoke. "On my world," she said, her voice soft and calm and deadly. "We have a saying." She pulled Tyrek closer, and he could not resist. His forearms were useless. His greater height meant nothing. All his noble blood and wealthy family and social power could not help him now. Her face was centimeters from his. He could see every detail of her alien features. He could see the slight flush in her brown skin where he had slapped her. He could see the absolute stillness in her dark eyes. In the eighth second, she finished her sentence. "Do not start fights you cannot finish." Her grip tightened for just a moment, and Tyrek felt his hollow bones bend under the pressure. They did not break, but they came close. The pain was unlike anything he had ever experienced. And in that moment of agony, he finally understood. He was not the predator here. He had never been the predator. He was prey that had been stupid enough to attack something far higher on the food chain. In the ninth second, Kira released him. She simply opened her hand and let go. Tyrek stumbled backward, clutching his arm to his chest. His crest had gone completely dark. His legs were shaking. His four hands were trembling uncontrollably. He looked at the human girl with new eyes. He saw the compact, dense body that carried more muscle than it appeared. He saw the steady breathing of someone who was not even slightly tired. He saw the calm expression of a predator that had chosen mercy. She could have broken every bone in his arm. She could have done far worse. He understood now that she had been holding back, from the very beginning. All those weeks of bullying, all those cruel words and mean tricks, and she had never once retaliated. Not because she was weak, not because she was afraid, but because she had been giving him chances to stop. She had been showing him kindness that he did not deserve. In the 10th second, Kira sat back down. She pulled her chair back to the table. She picked up her spoon. She took a bite of her gray nutrient paste as if nothing had happened. Around her, 200 students remained completely still. They stared at the small human girl who had just demonstrated why her species ruled the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. They watched her eat her tasteless meal and turned back to her engineering manual as if the confrontation had been nothing more than a minor interruption. Tyrek stood there, unable to move. His legs would not carry him away. His voice would not work. He could only stand and tremble and understand, at last, what a terrible mistake he had made. The silence stretched on for a long, long moment. Then, very quietly, a young Morashi student in the back of the room whispered to her friend, "What is she reading?" The friend checked the display. It is a manual about the station's life support systems. She seems to be learning how the whole station works. The first student swallowed nervously, so she could probably figure out how to shut off the air to any section she wanted. The friend nodded slowly. Both of them decided, right then and there, that they would never do anything to upset the human exchange student. In fact, they would go out of their way to be kind to her. It seemed like the smart thing to do. Across the atrium, one by one, other students came to the same conclusion. The human was not a victim to be pitied or a primitive to be mocked. She was something entirely different. She was a reminder that the universe was bigger and more dangerous than they had ever imagined. And she was sitting right there, eating paste and reading about engineering, as if she had not just changed everything. Academy security arrived in the atrium exactly 12 minutes after the incident. 12 minutes. In all that time, Tyrek Vertan had not moved from where he stood. His legs had refused to carry him away. His mind had been trapped in a loop, replaying those terrible 10 seconds over and over again. He could still feel the ghost of Kira's grip on his arm, that crushing pressure that had shown him how fragile he truly was. The security officers were tall Morashi, trained to handle conflicts between students of all species. They looked at the scene with confusion. There was no fight happening. There was just a HFY noble standing in the middle of the room, trembling, while a small human girl calmly ate her lunch. "What happened here?" the lead officer asked. Nobody answered at first. The students were still too shocked to speak. Then, slowly, voices began to rise. Everyone wanted to explain what they had witnessed. The atrium filled with overlapping accounts, all telling the same story. The investigation that followed was swift and thorough. The security team reviewed the surveillance footage from a dozen different angles. They saw everything. They saw weeks of harassment. They saw Tyrek knocking datapads from Kira's hands. They saw him spreading rumors and convincing the cafeteria to deny her proper food. And they saw the final confrontation, the slap that started it all, and the 10 seconds that ended it. More than 30 students came forward to give testimony. Some of them had been too afraid to speak before, but now they wanted their voices heard. They told stories of Tyrek's cruelty, not just toward Kira, but toward many other students. The HFY noble had been a bully for years, and everyone knew it. Lecturer Solace submitted her urgent requests as evidence. She showed the administration all the warnings she had given, all the time she had begged someone to intervene. Her glass-like body hummed with justified vindication. "I told you," she said to the vice principal. "I told you this would happen. Humans are not prey. You cannot push them without consequences." The vice principal, for once, had nothing to say. The academy board held an emergency meeting to decide what to do. The Vothan family was very powerful. They had donated millions of credits to the academy over the years. Expelling their son would have political consequences. But then someone on the board pulled up Earth's military history. They read about the wars humans had fought. They read about weapons that could destroy entire cities in a flash of light. They read about a species that had nearly wiped itself out multiple times and kept coming back stronger. They read about something called spite, a human emotion that drove them to keep fighting even when victory was impossible. The board members looked at each other with pale faces. "If we do not punish the boy," one of them said slowly, "the humans might see it as an insult to their species. They might think we approve of attacking their people. And if they decide we are enemies," another added, "what then? They come from a Class 12 Deathworld. They breathe poison and live under crushing gravity. If they can survive their own planet, what could we possibly do to stop them?" The vote was unanimous. Tyrek Vertan was expelled from the Galactic Academy effective immediately. His family protested, of course. They threatened to withdraw their funding. They threatened legal action. They threatened everything they could think of. But the Academy stood firm. The Votham family quietly withdrew their complaints when they received a private message from Earth's newly established Galactic Embassy. The message was very polite. It simply noted that humanity was watching with interest how the situation would be resolved. Nobody wanted to find out what would happen if humanity became uninterested in being polite. With Tyrek gone, the Academy's administration turned their attention to Kira. They were terrified that she would be angry. They were afraid that she would file complaints or demand compensation or contact the human authorities. The station commander himself requested a private meeting with her. He was a grizzled old Vethkai who had seen many strange things in his long career, but he had never been more nervous than when the small human girl walked into his office. "Miss Vasquez," he began, his glass-like body chiming softly with stress. "On behalf of the entire Academy, I want to offer my deepest apologies. The way you were treated was unacceptable. If there is anything we can do to make amends, please name it." Kira looked at him with those dark, calm eyes. Then, to his shock, she laughed. It was a warm, genuine laugh, but the commander still flinched at the sound. He could not help it. His instinct screamed that a predator was showing its teeth. "Commander," Kira said, still smiling, "on Earth, that would not even count as a real fight. I have had worse disagreements with my little brother. Honestly, I am just glad it is over. Can I please get real food now instead of that gray paste?" The commander nearly collapsed with relief. "Of course. Yes. Absolutely. The cafeteria will provide whatever you need. We will hire human cooking specialists if necessary." After Kira left, the commander immediately sent a classified report to the Galactic Council. He recommended that Earth's official threat assessment be upgraded from potential concern to do not provoke under any circumstances. The Council agreed within the hour. In the weeks that followed, life at the Academy changed in wonderful ways. Students no longer avoided Kira out of fear. Instead, they approached her with curiosity and respect. They wanted to learn about Earth and humans and the strange, beautiful, terrifying world that had created her. Kira was happy to teach them. She helped struggling Vethkai students with their physics homework, explaining concepts in simple ways that made difficult ideas easy to understand. She spent time with homesick Morashi students, sharing stories about missing home and finding comfort in new places. She even joined the Academy's cooking club, where she demonstrated human recipes that involved fire and high heat and made the safety monitors scream with alarm. The fire alarms went off 3 times during her first cooking demonstration, but everyone agreed that the food was worth it. One day, a new student arrived at the Academy. She was young and nervous and did not know anyone. She saw Kira sitting in the atrium and was too afraid to approach her. She had heard the stories about the human Deathworlder. An older Keth volume student noticed her fear. He walked over and sat down beside her. "You do not need to be afraid of the human," he said gently. "She is actually very kind. She helped me with my engineering project last week." "But I heard what she did," the new student whispered. "I heard she defeated a Keth volume noble with one hand." The older student nodded. "Yes, she did." "And do you know what that means?" The new student shook her head. "It means she showed him mercy. She could have hurt him badly, but she chose not to. The human had every right to be angry after what he did to her, but she only used enough force to stop him. Nothing more." He looked across the atrium at Kira, who was laughing with a group of friends from different species. "The wise do not test mercy twice," he said. "Be kind to her, and she will be kind to you. That is the human way. They are fierce when they must be, but gentle when they can be. And honestly, is that not what we all should strive for?" The new student thought about this. Then she stood up, took a deep breath, and walked over to introduce herself to the human girl from Earth. And that was how Kira Vasquez made another friend.